And the budget process continues. To find more about it, Channel 18's Sarah Colvin talks with Finance Director Mark Milne on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Wednesday, May 4th, 2016. I'm Sarah Mantle.
So, Mark, we're definitely deep in budget season. Council poised to finish up the capital improvement plan this week, and then it's on to the operating budget. So I know that that has come back from the printer. It's been distributed to town councilors. We're not going to talk about the kind of nitty-gritty of that, but wanted today to talk a little bit about the timetable and get an overview of the operating budget that we are going to be learning more about in the coming weeks.
Sure. We will have the appropriation orders for the operating budget. They will appear on the Council's agenda May 19th for a first reading, and then on June 2nd we will begin the public hearings on those appropriation orders, which will probably continue until June 16th, when we anticipate them to be completed, because it normally takes at least 2 council meetings to go through all the appropriation orders for the operating budget. I think there's about 25 or 26 appropriation orders that make up the operating budget.
Absolutely. And so tell me a little bit, again, so May 19th, the budget will be presented. June 2nd, the hearings will begin. What happens in between now and then? Is it just more time for the council to kind of review those appropriation orders?
Sure. They'll, as you mentioned, the books themselves, the actual budget documents, were delivered to the council office yesterday afternoon, I believe. We will also be delivering a copy to our Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. They will be going through the budget, analyzing the budget, and preparing a report on the operating budget, which they will present at the June 2nd Town Council meeting. So between now and June 2nd is the time for any questions that people may have in regards to the operating budget. They can come forward and ask town officials, any questions or clarifications they'd like on the operating budget itself.
Absolutely. And of course, just to remind viewers, as we've talked about, the capital budget is kind of those one-time expenditures, the big projects, et cetera. The operating budget is really what funds the day-to-day operations of all our town departments.
That's correct. Yeah, the biggest ones being, of course, education and public safety and public works. That's predominantly where a majority of our budget dollars are spent from an operational perspective. Like you mentioned, these are the day-to-day operations. So this is the budget that funds those recurring ongoing costs from year to year.
Absolutely. So if we're kind of taking the high-level overview of this budget, are there any significant changes, at least we can talk about from that high-level perspective from last year to the coming year?
Well, it's interesting that from the high-level perspective, we're looking at a $181.4 million operating budget combined when we take our general fund and all 8 of our enterprise funds together, which is roughly the same dollar amount that was budgeted in this current fiscal year, 2016. So it's from that perspective, it's a flat spending dollar spending budget. There's no increase. However, the FY16 budget had a couple of items in it that were one-time in nature, large items that were one-time in nature. We had a $4 million transfer to the Capital Trust Fund, and we had a snow and ice deficit of $2.6 million. And so those are not repeated this year. The $4 million transfer won't be repeated in 17, nor will the $2.6 million snow removal deficit. That's actually dropped to $1.5 million. So it was a $1.1 million reduction there. So when you remove those 2 items from the year-over-year spending, the budgets are up about $5 million or 3.5% between the general fund and all the enterprise funds. And we've explained all of this in the budget document itself to give the reader a clearer picture of the year-over-year spending, removing those significant one-time events.
Absolutely. Anything else significant, or anything else changing in terms of the budget, or that we can kind of note at this point in time before getting too deep into it?
Sure. There are, we are using, $2 million less of our surplus to balance this operating budget, which is always a good thing. Again, most of that's attributable to a smaller snow removal deficit this year. As you know, the winter wasn't nearly as harsh as the previous year. Hopefully we won't see another one of those winters in a while.
Absolutely.
And there are several new positions being proposed within the school department as well as the municipal operations, and we can get into those as the weeks progress here and talk more about those on a case-by-case basis. But there are about 12 new positions being proposed in this operating budget for the school departments and Public Works Department and the Community Services Department mainly. That's where most of the new initiatives are being presented.
Great. And again, as you say, we can talk a little bit more about that once the budget document is made public. But again, this good serves as a reminder that the budget really is the time of year where we do have, you take a look at the positions that are here in town, and whether you decide to eliminate or create new positions. That's one of the functions that the budget serves, is to provide a vehicle for that.
Yeah, that's correct. And the other significant change in this budget this year, you will see that when you dive into it, is that the Airport Enterprise Fund actually has a significant reduction in its operating budget, and that's principally as a result of the Island Airlines bankruptcy filing. They were responsible for generating about 1/3 of the fuel sales out at the airport. And with a significant reduction like that in fuel sales, obviously the airport's estimated revenues for next year are going to be significantly less than they are this year. Correspondingly, that translates to a significant reduction on the operating expense side of their budget. And we can talk more about get into the Airport Enterprise Fund and more specifically as the weeks progress. But most of that reduction is going to be in the form of reduced jet fuel purchases, because they don't have to buy as much jet fuel anymore because they're not selling as much. But they've had to go through their operating budget and cut across the board almost everywhere in order to come in within this new lower revenue estimate that they have. Exactly.
Were there any other places in the budget where cuts had to be made? I mean, I know we're in pretty decent financial shape.
No, we did. There are no other reductions elsewhere in the budget. In personnel, we don't have any reductions, but we do have several reductions in operating expense areas. For example, we've actually realized quite a bit of savings through retirements. We've had several people retire within the police department and within the school department. That has resulted in some salary savings for us. We've been able to replace those positions with at salaries less than the people who were retiring. We've also were able to receive a favorable contract on our gasoline and diesel fuel bids, which resulted in close to $80,000 in savings in the fuel area. We saw some savings in our utility budgets across the board. And we were also, again, that snow and ice removal costs went down by $1.1 million from the previous year. And finally, we also had a school department was able to transition a program from the Cape Cod Collaborative back into the district, reducing the number of slots that we need to pay for through the Cape Cod Collaborative, offering some savings there as well.